We all know about one of world's superpower country, Russia. But do you know Russia was once known as Soviet Union or USSR? But after some tragic incidents, Soviet Union was collapsed. Today we lighten up factors that down biggest superpower of world to at bottom and broke their economy. So let's start. Collapse of the Soviet Union. Collapse of the Soviet Union. Sequence of events that led to the dissolution of the Soviet Union on December 31, 1991. The former superpower was replaced by 15 independent countries, that is Armenia, Azerbaijan, Belarus, Estonia, Georgia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, Latvia, Lithuania, Moldova, Russia, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, Ukraine, and Uzbekistan. The Soviet flag above the Kremlin was replaced with the flag of the Russian Federation, led by its first president, Boris Yeltsin. At the same moment, the world's largest communist state broke into 15 independent republics, leaving America as the last remaining global superpower. Many factors leading to the collapse of the Soviet Union: a rapidly failing post-World War II economy and weakened military, along with a series of forced social and political reforms like perestroika and glasnost, played major roles in the fall of the mighty Red Bear. The Soviet economy, based on its world leadership in petroleum production. The Soviet economy remained strong until the German invasion of Moscow in 1941. By 1942, the Soviet gross domestic product had plummeted by 34%, crippling the nation's industrial output and retarding its overall economy until the 1960s. In 1964, new Soviet President Leonid Brezhnev allowed industries to emphasize profit over production. By 1970, the Soviet economy reached its high point, with a GDP estimated at about 60% that of the United States. In 1979, however, costs of the Afghanistan war took the wind out of the Soviet economy's sails. By the time the USSR withdrew from Afghanistan in 1989, its $2,500 billion GDP had dropped to just over 50% of the United States' $4,862 billion. Even more telling, the per capita income in the USSR was $8,700 compared to $19,800 in the United States. Despite Brezhnev's reforms, the Politburo refused to increase the production of consumer goods. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, average Soviets stood in breadlines as Communist Party leaders amassed ever greater wealth. Witnessing the economic hypocrisy, many young Soviets refused to buy into the old-line communist ideology. As poverty weakened the argument behind the Soviet system, the people demanded reforms, and reform they would soon get from Mikhail Gorbachev. Gorbachev's policies, glasnost, was intended to remove some of the decades-old limitations on the daily lives of the Soviet people. Freedoms of speech, the press, and religion were restored, and hundreds of former political dissidents were released from prison. In essence, Gorbachev's glasnost policies promised the Soviet people a voice and the freedom to express it, which they would soon do. Unforeseen by Gorbachev and the Communist Party, perestroika and glasnost did more to cause the fall of the Soviet Union than they did to prevent it. Thanks to perestroika's economic drift toward Western capitalism, coupled with glasnost's apparent loosening of political restrictions, the government that Soviet people once feared suddenly appeared vulnerable to them. Seizing on their new powers to organize and speak out against the government, they began to demand the total end of Soviet rule. The 1989 revolutions. Gorbachev believed the health of the Soviet economy depended on building better relationships with the West, especially the United States. To placate U.S. President Reagan, who in 1983 had called the USSR the evil empire, while ordering a massive U.S. military buildup, Gorbachev promised in 1986 to get out of the nuclear arms race and to withdraw Soviet troops from Afghanistan. Later the same year, he drastically reduced Soviet troop strength in the Warsaw Pact nations. In Poland, the anti-communist trade unionist solidarity movement succeeding in forcing the communist government to grant the Polish people the right to free elections. The Berlin Wall. Since 1961, the heavily guarded Berlin Wall had divided Germany into Soviet Communist-ruled East Germany and Democratic West Germany. The wall prevented often violently dissatisfied East Germans from fleeing to freedom in the West. East Germany's communist leadership was forced from power, and on November 9th, for the first time in nearly 3 decades, the Berlin Wall ceased to function as a political barrier, and East Germans could travel freely to the West. By October 1990, Germany was fully reunified, signaling the coming collapse of the Soviet Union and other communist Eastern European regimes. A weakened Soviet military. The economic liberalization of perestroika and the political chaos of glasnost severely reduced military funding and strength. Between 1985 and 1991, the residual troop strength of the Soviet military fell from over 5.3 million to fewer than 2.7 million. Finally, in August 1991, Communist Party hardliners, who had always opposed perestroika and glasnost, led the military in an attempt to overthrow Gorbachev. However, the 3-day August coup, possibly the last attempt by the hardline communists to save the Soviet Empire, failed when the now fragmented military sided with Gorbachev. Though Gorbachev remained in office, the coup further destabilized the USSR, thus contributing to its final dissolution on December 25, 1991. Blame for the collapse of the Soviet Union is often unfairly placed solely on the policies of Mikhail Gorbachev. In the final analysis, it was his predecessor, Leonid Brezhnev, who wasted the nation's massive profits from a 20-year-long oil boom on an unwinnable arms race against the United States, rather than working to raise the standards of living of the Soviet people, long before Gorbachev came to power. So that was the factor of collapse of Soviet Union. In current scenario, all nations take lesson from these incidents to save their country from internal collapse and crisis.
Thank you for watching. If you like our video, then please like, share and subscribe our channel. Don't forget to hit the bell icon for more latest updates. Meet you in next video. Till then, stay healthy, stay happy.